GS1 और GS2 की अप्रोच की बात करेंगे हम लोग, राइट? हम कंटेंट में नहीं जाएंगे, कैसे अप्रोच करना है, विल टॉक अबाउट दैट. Those of you who have already written this exam before have already gone through this process, so you are probably aware of how exactly things happen, right? एक दिन की बात है जिसके लिए आप पूरी साल भर मेहनत करते हैं. एक दिन भी की क्या, 4 घंटे की बात है. 9:30 बजे से लेकर 11:30 बजे तक, और फिर 2:30 बजे से लेकर 4:30 बजे तक, राइट? सो व्हाट शुड वी डू? तो हम बहुत पहले की हम तैयारी तो कर ही रहे हैं, बट लेट अस टॉक अबाउट व्हाट वी शुड बी डूइंग ऑन द eve of एग्जाम. मतलब एग्जाम के एक दिन पहले उसकी इवनिंग को क्या करना चाहिए, यू नो, क्या करना चाहिए. बेसिकली इस दिन इवनिंग तक इट इज एक्सपेक्टेड कि आप पढ़ेंगे. मैं आपको कहूं कि नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए तब भी आप पढ़ोगे. सो इसलिए मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि आपको नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए, जनरली पढ़ते हैं, बट ideally around 7-8 in the evening, that's the end of your studies, right? On the eve, prepare yourself mentally for tomorrow. ठीक है? तो रेडीनेस में आपको देखना है कि आपकी रेडीनेस क्या है. बेसिकली व्हाट इज योर रेडीनेस. इस दिन रेडीनेस आपकी तैयारी की नहीं देखना है, रेडीनेस देखना है कि आपको क्या चीजें चाहिए, यू नो. कीप दैट थिंग रेडी विद यू. व्हाट डू यू नीड? The first most important thing is your admit card. Keeping it ready, you know, you have to take a printout of your admit card, right? Where your photo should be clearly visible. तो ये admit card आपके पास है क्या, है ना? एक जगह पे उसको रखें. आपके पास carry one photo ID card also. Additional photo ID card carry करिए अपने साथ में, which is always good. Sometimes there can be a situation where some might just ask you आपका फोटो आईडेंटिटी कार्ड. आजकल थोड़ा सा stringent होती हैं चीजें, right? What else? What is this required? Pen, right? पेन का उपयोग करना है आपको. And then because only black color, ball point pen, right? At least 2. If you carry 3, it's good. 2 से 3 पेन तो आप तैयार कर ही लीजिए. यू नो, यू शुड हैव इट, जस्ट हैव इट रेडी. व्हाट एल्स डू यू नीड? जस्ट दीस थिंग्स, जस्ट हैव देम रेडी. अच्छा खाना खाइए, जो आपकी पसंद का खाना वो खाइए उस दिन, राइट? इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू बी हैप्पी. एंड देन ट्राई टू स्लीप एज अर्ली एज यू कैन, यू नो. हैव अ गुड डिनर. नाउ आई एम राइटिंग दिस मीन्स इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. ओके. And sleep early. Sleep early. This is very very important. अच्छा, मैं जो आपको बता रहा हूँ ये चीजें, this is something that I have done myself and have found it to work. That doesn't really necessarily mean that it will work for everyone, but it is very likely that it will work for most of us, because the thing is that we are, you know, generally similar when it comes to such aspects, you know. So do this. Sleep early, maybe as early as you can, maybe 10ish, you know, 10 साढ़े 10 बजे के आसपास सोने की कोशिश करें. And what is important is to good 8 hours sleep. This is a very important recommendation. यदि आप आम तौर पे आपकी तैयारी के दौरान संभव है कि 8 घंटे ना सो रहे हो, recommended तो है ही, but this day you must. If it doesn't let you sleep, and that's why you should try to sleep, but if you can sleep, then nothing like it. Anxiety is because of tomorrow. But if you connect that anxiety and see 8 hours sleep as a solution to that anxiety, it might help. The best way to beat that anxiety is to just sleep, if you can, of course. But then आप mentally prepare रखिए, and this is very important. You must have 8 hours sleep, right? And do not read anything after say 8 o'clock, you know. कुछ भी नहीं पढ़िए 8 o'clock के बाद में. आपको कितना भी क्यों ना लगे कि मेरा ये पार्ट छूट गया है, ये मैंने कवर नहीं किया, वैसे भी ऐसी कोई करंट अफेयर्स की चीज आने वाली नहीं है जो उस दिन हुई हो या उसके एक हफ्ता पहले, एक महीने पहले, वो भी नहीं आने वाली है. सो यू डोंट वरी अबाउट इट. इट्स नॉट एन इंटरव्यू. डोंट वरी. ओके, just relax as much as you can. Don't read anything. Okay, कुछ भी नहीं पढ़ना है इसके बाद. Then you come to the next day, right? You can stop me and ask me questions in between, right? We'll come to the main part first, but let us then the day of the exam, right? So the exam day, you are very likely to be already at a place of your center. Prelims के center बहुत है नहीं, तो if you are not living in that city, then it is always advisable to be there at least 2 days before the exam. ऐसा नहीं कि exam के दिन सवेरे पहुंच रहे हैं. कम से कम 2 दिन पहले आप जाइए. यदि आप उस शहर में नहीं रहते हैं, यदि आप उस शहर में रहते हैं तो फिर तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. बट यदि आप उस शहर में नहीं रह रहे हैं तो 2-3 दिन पहले जाइए एंड हैव अ वेरी कंफर्टेबल स्टे. हो सकता है कि आप लोगों में से किसी को प्रॉब्लम ना हो, बट बहुत से जो स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं जो उन शहरों में नहीं रहते हैं जहाँ पे सेंटर है, उनको बहुत दिक्कत होती है. या तो अपने किसी रिलेटिव के यहाँ पर उनको रुकना पड़ता है, या फिर वो किसी होटल में रुकते हैं. सो इफ यू आर स्टेइंग विद योर रिलेटिव्स और इन सम होटल, मेक श्योर दैट यू आर कंफर्टेबल. These 2-3 days of stay is not to be harsh upon yourself. यदि किसी रिश्तेदार के घर रुक रहे हैं तो उनको पता होना चाहिए कि आपको भाई उस कंफर्ट की जरूरत है, उस समय की और उस प्राइवेसी की जरूरत है, राइट? और यदि किसी होटल में रुक रहे हैं तो ठीक ठाक इसमें कोशिश करिए रुकने का, जहाँ कंफर्ट हो, राइट? मेंटल डिस्टर्बेंस कम से कम हो, कोशिश करिए कि ऐसा करने का. You must see if you are not very familiar with the center, यदि आपने पहले वो सेंटर नहीं देखा है तो it's a good idea to see where the center is located, है ना? सेंटर कहाँ पे है देखना चाहिए. यदि आप उसी शहर में रहते हैं, आपको पता है कि इस फला कॉलेज में है, तो जाहिर है आपको पता है कि वो कॉलेज कहाँ है और आप जहाँ रुके हैं, आप जहाँ रहते हैं वहां से कितनी दूरी पर है, कितना समय लगेगा. बट यदि ऐसा नहीं है तो आपको कॉलेज या वो जो सेंटर है वो देखना चाहिए. आई रिमेम्बर बिकॉज आई वॉज इन दिल्ली में जब मैंने प्री दिया था, तो उसके लगभग 4-5 दिन पहले, बिकॉज मैं दिल्ली में ही रह रहा था उस समय, 4-5 दिन पहले हम बाकायदा ऑटो रिक्शा करके देखने गए थे सेंटर कहाँ है, कितना दूर है, बिकॉज दिल्ली में बहुत दूरी होती है. तो हम आई यूज्ड टू स्टे समवेयर, मैं रहता था जिया सराय में, और वो सेंटर था नॉर्थ दिल्ली में. तो जिया सराय इज इन साउथ दिल्ली, नॉर्थ दिल्ली विच इज अबाउट ऑलमोस्ट 1.5 hour. ठीक है, तो देख लेना चाहिए. तब तो गूगल मैप कुछ नहीं हुआ करते थे, अब तो गूगल मैप, गूगल और ये सब चीजें इंटरनेट पर है तो बहुत आसान हो गया. बट अदरवाइज इट्स स्टिल वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू सी इट. हाउ डू वी रीच द सेंटर? इफ somebody कैन ड्रॉप यू बाइक पे, कार में, इट्स द बेस्ट थिंग. ठीक है, कोशिश करिए कि अपने दोस्त को, किसी को छोड़ने को बोलिए. संभव नहीं है तो फिर ऑटो या कैब बड़ा आसानी से मिल जाता है. बस के चक्कर में मत पड़िए. आज के दिन बस के पीछे ना पड़िए. हो सकता है रेगुलर कोर्स में आप बस से जाते हो, बट नॉट टुडे. लेट अस गिव योरसेल्फ सम लग्जरी, राइट? बुक अ कैब एंड गो टू द लोकेशन. Then again, when you get up after 8 hours of sleep, you will be very fresh. No reading. No reading in the morning. This is very important. No reading. Anything you read at this stage is only going to harm you. it is not going to add any value to your preparation or to your mental readiness for the exam that you're taking. Okay. So do not read anything, do not stress yourself, just relax. Let that be the most relaxed morning you ever had. Let it be a time you enjoy, right? Very important, try to reach the center at least half an hour before. At least half an hour before. 9:30 is the time of the start of the exam. Generally, they would allow you to sit into the hall at least 15 minutes before that, 15-20 minutes before that. So try and be there at least 30 minutes in advance. Okay. Now, those students who are online, they can also type their, if there are questions, you can type them in the chat box or just open your mics and speak up and ask the questions. और यहाँ पर आप लोग तो पूछ ही सकते हैं. Just stop me if you have any doubt about anything that I'm telling. Just stop me and ask questions if you have. Right? This is very important. Now, it's a very good thing to carry a bag. जैसे स्कूल बैग टाइप की होती है ना, जो सैक, बैक सैक or something like that. It is good to carry it with you. Now, what I'll share with you is what I used to do when I wrote just one exam. So maybe not a very long experience in that sense, but still it could be useful. What do you carry in a bag? Of course, you carry all these things in your bag. The things that we have mentioned earlier. Yeah, these things. Right? And at the same time, you carry a few more things. You carry a water bottle with you. In this bag, carry a water bottle. You might be already doing all these things, but still, just to emphasize, water bottle is allowed inside the center, by the way, as far as I know, if you correct me if I'm wrong. But the transparent water bottle, not those water bottles, not those fancy water bottles, opaque ones, not those. I'm talking about the transparent water bottle, you know, जो mineral water bottle होती है या फिर घर की जो bottle होती है, transparent water bottle, carry at least 2 of them. Okay, which 2 of them, which is almost 2 liters of water. Okay, so that's for that you need a bag, right? Some kind of backpack or something. Then there's another important thing you should carry. What I used to carry was apples and bananas. Now you would say, what are these things? How are they very relevant for doing well in the exam? Well, they are. Okay, because you have 3 hours, right? Almost 2.5 hours in between. 2 घंटे से 2.5 घंटे का समय आपके पास है ही उस समय. What do we do? उस समय आप क्या करोगे? लंच आप हो सकता है कि आप कुछ हेवी चीज लाओ आपके साथ, टिफिन लाते हैं. कुछ लोग मैंने ये भी देखा है कि वो स्नैक्स और बिस्किट्स और ये सब चीजें भी लाते हैं बीच में. डोंट एंगेज इनटू दैट. यदि आपका घर से आ रहे हो आप और घर, इफ यू आर स्टेइंग देयर, if your family stays there and if they can get you a good, nice, very light lunch, it's good to carry that. It's an option of lunch. But if you are staying somewhere away from your house and you can't afford carrying a very nicely made light lunch, it's a good idea to just simply carry some apples and bananas and just have them in the break. You know, a little bit of hunger will keep you more alert. Instead of having a very heavy lunch in between, which would tend to make you a little drowsy or maybe little slower on your alertness, it's always good to just simply have a couple of apples and bananas. They're full of energy and they keep you awake. In fact, I remember carrying a sack of apples with me in my mains, which again I wrote in Delhi. So I used to keep 3-4 apples on my table. Everybody would be very, surprised about carrying that, and I would just keep eating apples when I'm writing my answers. I don't recommend doing that, but it helps. You know, at least having a sip of water in between, in between your answers. But that's for mains though. But here you don't have really much time to do all those things. But always carry a bottle. You can always take a couple of breaks and sip water once in a while. So this is very important. तो यदि ये इसको करिएगा, then it is very important to remember that you carry a wrist watch. And what kind of wrist watch do we carry? Analog. Analog किसको बोलते हैं? कांटे वाली, right? The one that has hands, not the digital one, because digital one isn't even allowed. It's very important to carry a watch, and it is good if you carry a watch which you've been using for some time, instead of buying a very fresh new analog watch. Carry one which you generally wear, or maybe if you don't wear, then buy one a month before and try and use it. In fact, that is what I recommended last time also when I was talking about taking up mock test. When you do mock test, that's what you do, so you have this kind of analog watch. It's a good idea to take it off, remove it and place it before you on the table. That's what I used to do. You can also try that, because that's, if you're wearing it, you may tend to not just look at it often enough. But if it's right there in front of your eyes, you're more likely to see it and keep track of time, but not so often that it itself becomes a nuisance and kind of, it makes you really worried about the time that you're taking. But just once in a while, just to check. This is very crucial to carry, right? So now let us come to the carrying a handkerchief is important. If you're not used to carrying handkerchief, I don't know whether you carry handkerchief or not. Do you carry? Huh? All of you? If you are not used to carrying a handkerchief, some of them are, do carry one. This is the month of June. It could have been May, but this time it's June. It's going to be very humid and hot, unless it's raining. But even if it's raining, it could still be hot. And if it's not raining, there's going to be massively humid in the middle of June. The center, and particularly the place you're sitting at, may not have a fan overhead. It's a luxury to have a fan right over your head in such exam halls. It's important to carry a good handkerchief. I have faced this problem because the place I was sitting at did not have a fan, and it keeps sweating all the time, and that keeps making you very uncomfortable. This handkerchief might just be very helpful in such case. ठीक है, ये छोटी छोटी बातें हैं, बट बहुत मदद करती हैं. क्या? पानी, right? The best drink to have during the exam is water. I don't know whether you can afford carrying a glass of coffee. आप कॉफी के बारे में पूछ रहे हैं कुनाल? हॉल के बाहर तो आप कर सकते हो. If you're used to taking it, take it. Anything that makes you comfortable, So if you're asking me, should I have a cup of coffee before going into the exam hall? Why not? If you're used to having it, if that makes you comfortable, at home, at ease, do it. But inside the hall, of course, will not be allowed coffee, tea, anything. So it's going to be mostly water. So ये चीजें हैं. If you're there at the center, already half an hour before, 40 minutes before, the moment, of course, you have to look up for your roll number, your seating arrangement. Generally बड़े centers होते हैं, हजारों की संख्या में students आते हैं. It could itself be a difficult task to find where you're sitting, right? Do that well in advance. Keep your cool during that time. And the moment the students are allowed inside the hall, take that first opportunity to enter the hall. Don't wait. I have seen some of them waiting till the bell rings, वो नहीं करना है कि अभी अभी से जाके क्या करेंगे, 20 मिनट पहले क्यों बैठेंगे. बैठिए. Make use of that time. The first opportunity you get to get into your hall and to your seat, your numbered seat, go and sit there. Relax. Make yourself comfortable in that seat because you're going to spend a lot of time in that seat, right? And very important time. तो जाके बैठ जाइए, So in the examination hall, okay, so take your seat as early as you can. Okay. It's they don't serve you with the question paper or even the answer sheet immediately. There is some time before they do so. Use that time to relax. If you follow some meditation technique, or some relaxation technique, that's the time to make use of it. Most of them do. But even if you don't, it's a good idea to simply close your eyes and breathe, take long breaths, and that itself could be very relaxing. But if you're following some relaxation technique, use it. Shut yourself primarily from the world around you. Get into yourself. Okay? Get into yourself. As if the world doesn't exist. You're not there to see who's sitting beside you, whether the fan is there over your head, or whether you're sitting at the end, or who's coming in, who's going out. Nothing. When you're there, you're just there, and you're the only one there, right? With that kind of concentration, So these about 10-15 minutes that you have should be used to just simply bring that focus back on yourself and gather yourself physically and mentally, right? And then once you're served, of course, then you have this sheet coming up which you have to fill, go through that chore as you do. And now we will come to, if there are questions you can ask, now we'll come to the actual questions, right? Paper, how do you do that? So about GS1, I must say, so GS1, you have 100 questions, right? Which means you have 1.2 minutes. How does that translate? Almost 80 seconds. Huh? How does it translate? Or less than that, right? To do what? To do what? To do one question, right? So in fact, reduce it. I must say you reduce it. You reduce it to say about 70 seconds. Now that's the time you have to answer one question. Okay? Keep this in mind. I believe you are doing this. Now just practice all these things in your test, the mock test that you do. Try doing all these things there. Get used to them. And they are very natural things. So when you start doing questions, start with the first question. Start with the first question. We're talking about GS1. पहले क्वेश्चन से स्टार्ट करना है, right? You have your watch, right? You know that you're starting right on time. You also know that you cannot possibly spend more than a minute and 10 seconds on a question, right? So that's your That's a mental frame that you are in. Now, how do you approach? You read, now we have the question papers, right? यहाँ पे है question papers. What is this? All right. So this is how it is appearing. It's strange. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, जैसा है दिख तो रहा है आप लोगों को. Okay. Now this is your question paper. Which year is this? 23? Huh? 22. Okay, fine. GS1 ही है, ठीक है. Now you come to this first question, whether you in Hindi or English, this is the question that you come on. I don't know, it's annotations कहाँ है? Okay, ठीक है. So you come to the first question. Now, surprisingly, now I have this, I believe, I have these question papers, the actual booklets. Have you seen these actual booklets? Print out लेके देखा आपने? जिन्होंने एग्जाम नहीं दिए, जिन्होंने एग्जाम दिए उनके पास तो ऑलरेडी है, नहीं दिए हैं तो इसको देखो, इसको प्रिंट करके just feel it. It's very heavy. Even if you just want to read it, it takes time, right? So is it that question paper we're talking about? Right. So ये वो question paper है, huh? So this is how you approach it. Now, when you are saying that you have to not spend more time on a question, what does that mean? इस क्वेश्चन को पढ़ने में कितना समय लगता है? Rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility are related to the provisions of lending by which one of the following? Okay, it's a shortest possible question that you can expect. इससे short question नहीं आएगा. Very plain question with simple 4 options. Most of the questions will be a little longer than this. Now it takes me about 5 to 8 seconds to read. And the options are also very short. So it takes me another 5 to 10 seconds. So just about 20 seconds. When I read these questions, I for sure know one thing, whether I know the answer or not. Right? ठीक है? प्रश्न पढ़ते ही इमीडिएटली आपको पता चल जाता है कि इसका आंसर आपको आता है या नहीं आता है. कम से कम इतने सिंपल वाले इसमें तो पहले इसमें पता चल जाएगा. और आपने 15 से 20 सेकंड ऑलरेडी बिता दिए हैं. So what does that mean is, even if you're not attempting that question, finally, if you decide not to attempt, you already spent 15 to 20 seconds minimum reading the question. And that's the call you have to take. You decide right now whether you want to attempt it or not. So there is a formula now. Whether you attempt a question or don't attempt it. It's very important because there's a negative marking. It becomes more important in GS2 that we will see. But here also it's important. You have to take a call right now whether you want to attempt this. Right? You have already spent 20 seconds. And within 3 seconds or 3-4 seconds, you have to now decide what do you want to do with this question. First, if you know the answer, attempt. No doubt. If you know that the answer, this is not an answer, for example, you're very sure that it is not Asian Development Bank. It could be that. It could be a situation. But you have these 3 options and you're not sure which one of these 3. Don't attempt. Okay? If you're able to eliminate, if you don't know the answer, then it comes to elimination. If you know the answer, it's about choosing that and attempting it. But if you don't know the exact answer, then it is about elimination, right? So you have been able to eliminate one option and you're left with 3 and you're not very sure it could be any of these 3, leave it. Okay? There could be third situation. First is you know the answer, you go ahead. Second is you have been able to eliminate 1. The third situation is you are able to eliminate 2. And you know that the answer is between these, or rather for this or this, whatever. You're not going with the correctness of this particular question. If you're very sure that this and this is not the answer, and the answer is between this and this, for example, B or C में से है, and you're very sure about it, go ahead. This is the time, this is the formula, I call it, this is the formula of half versus 1/3. This is a thumb rule. Half versus 1/3 thumb rule. It's just simple logic. Nothing very specific about it. The risk you're taking here, is slightly in your favor, because if you succeed in your guesswork here, it still has to be an intelligent guess. It can't be just very random. B or C में से भी choose करना है, तब भी it has to be intelligent guess. But the chances of you getting a right answer is 50-50 here, है ना? 50-50 आंसर है. 50% चांस है कि आपको करेक्ट आंसर मिलेगा. 50% चांस है आपको कितने 2 मार्क्स मिलने के, राइट? और पॉसिबिलिटी यदि गलत होता है तो लूज क्या करते हैं आप? This is what you lose. Okay? Just imagine in entire 100 questions that you attempt, or you attempt 20 such questions where you reduce it down to 2 options. Okay? ये जो situation है 20 questions में आती है. 20 questions में ऐसी situation आ रही है जिसमें आप 2 ऑप्शन में से श्योर है और आप गेस कर रहे हो. फिर उसमें से पॉसिबिलिटी है कि इसमें से 10 आपके करेक्ट होंगे. दिस इज सिंपल, बिल्कुल होना ही है. वो कभी 15 हो सकते हैं, कभी 8 भी हो सकते हैं, पर 10 होंगे ही, है ना? 8, 9, 10 होंगे ही. पॉसिबिलिटी, वी जस्ट गो बाय दिस लॉजिक. 10 यदि गलत होते, 10 सही होते हैं तो आपको 20 मार्क्स मिलते हैं, राइट? और जो 10 गलत होते हैं उसमें से आपके 6.6 मार्क्स कटते हैं. तो आप माइनस कर लो इसमें से. You stand to gain. Now this situation is really very much in favor. It is 20 versus 6.6. It is half versus 1/3. So क्या करना है? यदि आप 2 ऑप्शंस एलिमिनेट करने में सफल हो गए हैं, and you are very sure that the answer is between the 2 options, make an intelligent guess, attempt it then and there. You already spent good amount of time in reading. ठीक? So these are the situations in which you will find yourself mostly. ये हो सकता है कि जब आप बिल्कुल भी श्योर नहीं है, you just completely blank about it. The 4th situation, completely blank. हवा ही नहीं है, वो बोलते हैं ना, मुझे हवा ही नहीं इसके बारे में. If that is the case, and it can happen with some questions, कभी सपने में भी आपने सोचा नहीं उसके बारे में, कभी पढ़ा नहीं, सुना, नाम भी नहीं सुना उस चीज का, ऐसे क्वेश्चन भी आ सकते हैं. 2-4 तो ऐसे होते ही हैं. Leave it. Don't spend an extra second on it. Now, how do you do that? When you leave it, let me just see if you can move. I don't know. How do you move it? Does it move like this? Anyway, तो एक काम हम ये कर सकते हैं कि जब आप when you leave a question, right, mark it. For example, ये fourth वाला question है. For example, this is the 4th question. You've read it, you spent 20 seconds, 24, 22 seconds on it reading, and you decided इनमें से कोई भी situation नहीं है, बिल्कुल नहीं पता कुछ भी. Leave it. So mark it that you left it. How do you do that? I had developed my own way of telling myself, just to mark N, for example. सिंपल, पेंसिल, आप पेंसिल रखिए अपने साथ, एक पेंसिल से मार्क करिएगा, बॉल पेन यूज मत करिए, बॉल पेन शुड ओनली बी यूज्ड टू डार्कन योर सर्कल्स इन द ओएमआर शीट। एन मार्क कर दिया आपने ना, एन करके सर्कल करके रख दिया, you know that this is something that you decided to leave, correct? Now sometimes ये तो 4 सिचुएशन हो गई, बट एक 5वीं सिचुएशन आती है। वो क्या होती है? उसमें आप श्योर नहीं होते हैं, उसमें आपको कुछ और दिमाग लगाने की जरूरत पड़ती है। मतलब ये GS1 में बहुत कम होता है, GS2 में उसके बहुत चांसेस है, विल टॉक अबाउट दैट व्हेन यू कम टू GS2। that question is likely to take you more time than 1.2 minute। ठीक है, आपको पता है कि मैं इसको कर तो सकता हूं या कर सकती हूं, बट मुझे इसको सॉल्व करने में, इसका आंसर फाइंड आउट करने में 1.2 मिनट से ज्यादा लगने वाला है। then what do you do in that case? Do you spend that time on solving that question and trying to find an answer to that question by spending more than 1.2 minutes? The answer is no, not in that round. So then if the question number 2 is such question where you think that you know the logic, you understood it, but it's just the kind of question that's going to take little more time for you to solve, but you're sure that you're going to find an answer if you spend say 2 minutes on that. You already spent 20 seconds on it. Leave it for later. Mark L, later. Devise your own way of marking if you want. L for later. For example, I'm going to do it later. For example, I used to use N and L, so I'm using the same thing. The idea is to get to the end of the question paper. Okay, this is very crucial. You must get to the end of the question paper by 100th minute. Okay, 100th, get to the end by 100th minute. Get to the end of the paper by 100 minutes. 100 मिनट के आसपास आपको कोशिश करनी है। 100 मिनट का मतलब हो सकता है 102, 103, 104 भी हो, और वो आपकी घड़ी पर डिपेंड करता है। आपको पता होना चाहिए कि ये कब होते हैं, क्योंकि 100 ऐसे तो आता नहीं है, बट आपको पता होना चाहिए कि जो आपकी वॉच है उसके हिसाब से। मतलब मान लीजिए कि आपकी वॉच के हिसाब से आप चल रहे हैं, तो आपको कोशिश करनी है कि आप आखिरी क्वेश्चन पे, क्योंकि आप सीरियली चल रहे हैं, GS2 में थोड़ी अलग अप्रोच रहेगी, मैं बताऊंगा, पर यहाँ आप सीरियली चल रहे हैं और आप पढ़ते पढ़ते ही डिसाइड करते हुए चल रहे हैं। 100 मिनट का मतलब है कि 11:20 मिनट के आसपास तक, 11:10 मिनट के आसपास तक आपको डिसाइड आखिरी तक पहुंच जाना है। आपका लक्ष्य होना चाहिए कि 11:10 मिनट तक मुझे आखिरी क्वेश्चन तक पहुंचना है, राइट? इस प्रोसेस को फॉलो करते हुए, उस प्रोसेस में आपने N भी मार्क किया जो आपने पूरी तरह से छोड़ दिया, आपने L भी मार्क किया जो आपको फिर से वापस करना है, ज्यादा टाइम स्पेंड करना है, और आपने जो आपको आते हैं वो क्वेश्चंस अटेम्प्ट कर लिए। अटेम्प्ट करते करते डार्कन करना शुरू कर दीजिए। कुछ लोग करते हैं कि पूरा मार्क कर देते हैं और फिर डार्कन करते हैं, विच इज नॉट अ गुड आइडिया। इट कैन लैंड यू इन ट्रबल, सो डोंट डू दैट। When you mark कर दीजिए, that also gives you a little space between the questions, so use that। ऐसा करते हुए हो सकता है कि L वाले जो क्वेश्चंस है आपके 15 क्वेश्चन बच गए। It could be anything for anybody, it could be 5 for someone, it could be 10, 15, 20 for someone else, irrespective of what is that। Now you do the second round. In the first round you must try to get to the end of the question. Why is it so? Because if you spend time solving questions which are taking longer than 1.2 minute, and some of them can actually take 2.5 minutes, then you may actually end up not reaching the end, which means हो सकता है कि आप 100वें क्वेश्चन पे है और टाइम हो गया, 80 क्वेश्चंस पर है और टाइम हो गया, और 20 क्वेश्चंस आपके रह गए, और हो सकता है कि वो 20 में से 20 आपको आते हो, It's a hypothetical situation, but it is very likely, very likely, and this is what I have found with many students, कि आखिरी के जो 10 छोड़ के आए थे उसमें से 8 उनको आते थे. Now it could be psychological also, जो छूट जाते हैं लगता है कि हमें ये आते थे, but it could be true. You cannot afford to take any chance. The 10 that you could not attempt for want of time, for paucity of time, time नहीं मिलने के कारण जो 10, 12, 15 आपने छोड़ दिए, हो सकता है कि वो आप सब आपको आते हो. Right? इस स्ट्रैटेजी में वो चांस नहीं है. You already attempted. Now you know कि भाई मैंने जो करने थे कर लिए हैं, जो मुझे नहीं आते थे मैं ऑलरेडी डिसाइड कर चुकी हूँ कि मुझे अटेम्प्ट नहीं करना है. जो एलिमिनेशन वाले 2 वाले आते हैं मैं उसमें चांस ले चुकी हूँ, and that is in my favor, heavily in my favor, that chance. And then the ones that I can solve, but I will take time. Now I start with that. फिर से वापस आना है स्टार्टिंग में क्वेश्चन पेपर के, और फिर इनको ढूंढना है L कौन से है. स्टार्टिंग में आना है वापस, और 20 मिनट आपके पास अब है लगभग, और L वालों को सॉल्व करने के. अब टाइम का कंस्ट्रेंट नहीं रखना है अपने पास, इसको सॉल्व करते चलना है. मतलब यदि उस क्वेश्चन को हल करने में, सॉल्व करने में आपको 1.5 मिनट लगे, 2 मिनट लगे, 2.5 मिनट लगे, तब भी उसको पूरा समय देके सॉल्व करिए. Don't put any pressure on yourself in terms of time now, because this is something additional that you are trying to do, right? क्योंकि उसको आप जल्दबाजी करोगे तो गलती करोगे तो पूरा समय वहां बिता के उसको समय देके भी आपको वो उसका बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. So there you spend time. और हो सकता है कि आपने ऐसे 15 छोड़े होंगे, यदि 20 मिनट में, जो बचे हुए 20 मिनट में आप इसमें 7-8 भी कर पाते हो, 7 to 8, 2-2 मिनट लगा के, 2-2.5 मिनट लगा के, it's worth doing it. You should not try and attempt all 15. इसमें से 7-8 भी आपने कर लिया, काफी है. Right? How many correct answers do you need in GS1? So, say for example, so that's the strategy. You know the thumb rule of half versus 1/3 वाला, है ना, उसको यूज करिए, and that way all you need, say the cutoff is say 85, है ना, मान के चलो कि 85 का कट ऑफ है. How many answers do you need? Say 44, 43 correct answers, right? Out of 100. A good strategy would be, now this could be different for different people, but what is perhaps a better way of saying as to how many questions should you attempt and how many questions should you leave? It will be different for different people, but can there be a thumb rule there? Right? So if you ask me, then there could be a thumb rule here which would apply to most of the students. If not all, there will always be exceptions. Right? What is that? Because we already got the strategy आपको पता चल गई किसको छोड़ना है, किसको रिस्क लेनी है, कहाँ चांस लेना है. उसके बावजूद यदि हम एनालिसिस करने की कोशिश करें, so in an ideal situation you get 43 all correct and you leave all of them, so you're there. But that doesn't happen. To be sure about getting this score, the first category of answers that you wrote, the first category, which means you are very sure about it. I am 100% sure यही आंसर है. ऐसे कितने होंगे आंसर्स? 30-35 आंसर्स ऐसे हो, क्वेश्चंस ऐसे होंगे जिसमें आप 100% श्योर है. Then you don't have to worry. आप तो जाके आंख बंद करके प्री दे के आ जाओ. If you are very sure about 35 questions जहां पे आपको पता है बैंग यही आंसर है, this is the answer, 35 questions में, then you don't have to worry. बाकी इसमें तो आप रैंडमली करके आओगे तब भी 10 मार्क और मिल जाएंगे. So this can happen with some students that they are very sure ऑफ से 35-40 क्वेश्चंस की, हाँ ये तो 100% मेरा ऑप्शन 1 वाले है, वो ऑप्शन 1 में 35-40 कर लिया, विच इज अ वेरी गुड सिचुएशन. नॉर्मली होता नहीं है. नॉर्मली देर आर मोर क्वेश्चंस वी आर नॉट कंप्लीटली श्योर, विच नेसेसरीली मीन्स कि आइडियली कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि आप जो करें कि 35-40 क्वेश्चंस जो हैं वो आपके फर्स्ट कैटेगरी के होने ही चाहिए, जिसमें आप बहुत श्योर है. 100% श्योर कुछ नहीं होता है, बट बहुत श्योर है आपने, मतलब उसमें आपने एलिमिनेशन में नहीं जाना पड़ा, आपको आंसर पता था और आपने वो आंसर चूज किया और मार्क किया, एलिमिनेशन में नहीं जाना पड़ा. एटलीस्ट 20-30 क्वेश्चंस, at least 20-30 questions where you are 50% sure, वो वाली कैटेगरी. You know, this could be more, but at least 20-30 questions. This could be more, maybe it could be in the range of 30-40 if you ask 30-40 questions, and the rest should be no. So what are you doing actually? मान लीजिए कि इस पे से हम बॉटम उठाते हैं नो, या फिर ये उठाते हैं, तो ये 40 ये 80 हो गए, मतलब 20 क्वेश्चंस आप छोड़ रहे हैं. यू आर लिविंग 20 क्वेश्चंस अनअटेम्प्टेड. इसका हम लोअर एंड ले तो 35 ये कितने होता है 65, एंड यू आर लिविंग 35 क्वेश्चंस. इन दोनों में से कोई भी सिचुएशन चलेगी बेस्ड ऑन योर कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल. नहीं, वो तो बताया वैसे. क्या कह रहे हो, मुझे समझ में नहीं आया, आप बताओ.
65 क्वेश्चन जिसमें 50% में 30 क्वेश्चन होगा और 35 क्वेश्चन जो है उसमें हमें पता है, और बाकी जो 35 क्वेश्चन बचे उसमें से जो आपने बताया था कि हाँ बाद में जो 20 उसको बाद में करेंगे, वो क्वेश्चन भी तो हो सकते हैं.
हाँ वो भी हो सकता है, तो 4-5 क्वेश्चन होंगे, वो 5-6 क्वेश्चन वो भी हो सकते हैं बोनस. पर मैं कह रहा हूँ कि ये एन तो वो है जो छूट ही गए हैं, जो आपने उसके बाद भी छोड़ दिए, वो पहले वाली कैटेगरी में ही आ जाएंगे विकेश, क्योंकि आपने सॉल्व करके आंसर फाइंड किया है. जो आप एल वाली कैटेगरी बोल रहे हैं जिसका आप सेकंड राउंड में सॉल्व करते हैं, वो तो फर्स्ट वाली कैटेगरी इन्हीं में आ जा रहे हैं वो, क्योंकि यू आर श्योर अबाउट द आंसर, यू हैव वर्कड अपॉन इट, यू सॉल्व्ड इट एंड यू फाउंड एन आंसर, so that would fall in this category. If you ask me, generally जो analysis है, the whatever analysis I have done, and you would also perhaps have experienced it, people would get close to 35-40 correct answers. इतना मिल जाता है correct answers. The problem is यहाँ वो बहुत गड़बड़ कर जाते हैं. They get close to this wrong. 30-40 wrong हो जाते हैं. प्रॉब्लम कहाँ आ रही है, आप डिसाइड नहीं कर पा रहे हो ठीक से कि छोड़ना कौन सा है. So the strategy we used, you know, if you use that strategy, this should be taken care of. You must reduce this wrong answers. ये क्यों होता है, हमें you know we get into a feeling, वो सबके साथ होगा जरूर नहीं, but some of them can, some students can actually go through that, where you have a feeling that नहीं इन दो में से एक आंसर है और मैं कर लेती हूँ, और होता नहीं है. And that is why I repeatedly saying, वो जो चांस लेना है आपको वो तभी लेना है जब दो एलिमिनेट कर चुके हैं और आप 100% श्योर हो कि दो में से एक आंसर है, नहीं तो नो. यदि वो आप करोगे, आप कभी कभी लगता है कि मैं चलो इसके कर लेती हूँ, हो सकता है इनमें से कोई एक होगा ही तीन में से. डोंट डू दैट. So what is costing you is not that you are not getting correct enough answers. You're getting enough correct answers. The problem is you're losing marks on your wrong answers. ठीक है? If there is any question you can ask, but by this strategy we should be comfortably placed to get over that cutoff marks. But you should not be worrying about the cutoff marks, because you should be trying to do much better. So this is about GS1. Is there any question on this? If there is any question, you can ask. हाँ
सर एक डाउट है कि फर्स्ट राउंड जो हो जाता है उसमें जैसे मुझे आपने क्वेश्चन तो लगभग अगर मैंने 45 to 50 क्वेश्चन मेरे सही हो गया तो उसमें नेगेटिव मार्किंग नहीं है तो सर इतने क्वेश्चन में ये होगा फिर ये सब जब फर्स्ट राउंड हो जाता है तो सेल्फ डाउट बना रहता है कि यार अभी इतने कम क्वेश्चन हुए और अभी 50 क्वेश्चन और बचे सर रीड करके हो गए वो पता भी कि नहीं बन रहे जिसमें 50-50 आंसर है तो सर फिर वो थोड़ा मोटिवेशन कम हो जाता है उसमें क्या करना है
सो नो विकेश का जो क्वेश्चन है स्लाइटली डिफरेंट है, यूपीएससी का क्वेश्चन नहीं है। आप पीएससी की बात कर रहे हो, एमपीपीएससी की, जिसमें आप कह रहे हो कि नेगेटिव मार्किंग नहीं है। See, if there is no negative marking, then the approach will be very different. If there is a negative marking of half marks, approach will be different. If there is negative marking of 1/4 marks, approach will be different. This strategy is specifically for UPSC, where the deduction for a wrong answer is 1/3. It will change as per the pattern of the exam. Now, now just to answer your question, if there is no negative marking, why should you leave any answer unanswered? You know, you answer all.
तो इसमें भी तो ये हो सकता है कि जैसे मान लो कि फर्स्ट हाफ में मेरे 20 to 25 या 30 क्वेश्चन हो और उसके बाद क्या इतने कम ही क्वेश्चन हुए और 50-50 जो परसेंटेज है वो ज्यादा है तो फिर इसमें क्या करना है?
नहीं, मैं नहीं समझा क्वेश्चन। आप कह रहे हो कि
हाँ सर जैसे यूपीएससी
हाँ,
अगर मैंने फर्स्ट राउंड में मेरे जो मुझे एक्यूरेट आते हैं वो 25 क्वेश्चन
आपको कब पता चलता है?
सर जब फर्स्ट
अच्छा, आप कर रहे होते तभी आपको ओके, यू हैव अ फीलिंग ड्यूरिंग द एग्जाम इटसेल्फ that only 20 to 25 of your answers are correct.
सर उसके बाद फिर याद है कि नहीं भी और करना बाकी है और डाउट भी है बहुत सारे फिर सर वो मोटिवेशन डाउन हो जाता है कि नहीं अभी जो क्वेश्चन बचे हैं उनको और अच्छे से कैसे
तो बचे हुए क्वेश्चंस तो करने ही है ना, मतलब अच्छा ओके, यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कि आप ये पूरी स्टेजेस क्रॉस कर चुके हो, हाँ, और ये पूरी स्टेज क्रॉस करने के बाद आपने 20-25 ही करेक्ट हुए हैं और बाकी सब छोड़ने पड़ रहे हैं। आप डाउट है तो छोड़ना है। See, that's what I said. यदि 2 में से 1 का है तो आपको अटेम्प्ट करना है, पर यदि 3 में से 1 है तो नहीं करना है, और फिर कभी कभी तो बिल्कुल ही आउट ऑफ ब्लू है, मतलब कुछ भी नहीं पता तो छोड़ ही देना है उसको, गेस वर्क नहीं करना है। Now that depends on your preparation, but don't count all these things there, sitting there. वहां बैठे हुए आपको ये नहीं करना है कि मेरा मार्क्स कितने आने वाले हैं, नहीं, आप उस समय आपका पूरा ध्यान आपका बेस्ट करने में होना चाहिए, that you getting trying to do। और यदि नहीं है तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि अब चलो मेरे तो 25 ही सही आ रहे हैं, अब बचे हुए सब में मैं कुछ ना कुछ मार्क कर दूं, बी लगाऊं, राइट। Interestingly, if there is no negative marking, no, this is off the record, if there is no negative marking in a question paper and if you have no clue about the answer, no clue at all, just mark B. Okay, just mark B, forget about everything, just mark B. Why? Psychologically, when the papers are set, and now this is across exams, not just UPSC, MPSC, bank, whatever exam you're taking up, if it's a multiple choice question, very close to 35 to 40% of the answers are B. Logically, proportionally, they should be 25%, but they're generally to the tune of 35 to 40%, right? बट वो हमारे काम का नहीं है फॉर यूपीएससी। यस, इट इज एप्लीकेबल। हम उस पर डिटेल में इसलिए नहीं गए, वो दिस इज अ वेरी रेलेवेंट क्वेश्चन, whether this rule the strategy applies to anyone, any 2, any 3, yes, because there are options. Finally, they're the final options. So I'm talking about the final options, right? Only 2 are correct, only 1 is correct, or 1 and 2 are correct, or all 3 are correct. जो options है, final options, उसके बारे में आपकी श्योरिटी क्या है उसकी? we're talking about the final options, not about intermediary steps of the question. ठीक है, इसमें there are some chats which I'm not able to see. Wait. How would we skim through the paper once and then start attempting? No. This is absolutely no. This is a good strategy for mains, not for pre. The question is, कौन भाग्यश्री पूछ रही हैं? Sir, how about we skim through the paper once and then start attempting? First, Bhagyashri, I don't know how to skim through the paper. This thick paper, and how I don't know what skimming means. I believe skimming means reading as quickly as you can, but I don't know what is the advantage. If you can explain in the chat or open your mic, then let's try to understand what you have exactly in your mind when you say skimming through the paper, and then how is it going to help? Because this question paper itself runs into 45 pages. Skimming through 45 pages might actually take you, at least if you're trying to see what kind of questions are there, or you're just trying to see what kind of questions and how, I don't know how they're going to help. But if you have a thought on this, please share. All right. So if there's Bhagyashri, if you have a thought on this, because it's a very, I must say, very unusual thought of skimming through, because that is something that you must do, and not just once, but 2 or 3 times in mains, where the approach is very different, but not in pre. I don't recommend to do this in any papers. GS, koi skimming nahi. Start bang with the question 1 and follow the process. That doesn't help you. आप पूरा देख भी लिया तो क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला है? आप डिसाइड तो कर नहीं पाओगे स्कीमिंग से. You have to go through the question, the options, and then decide whether you want to attempt it or not.
I can solve this question, and I have eliminated 2 answers from here. And मेरा ये approach क्या है? मतलब how we can do smart guess. जब guessing कर रहे हैं लोग, तो ऐसा क्या करना चाहिए question में?
No, so there is no formula for intelligent guessing. It's about your preparation. Intelligent guess there's nothing called intelligent guess, because it's about your preparation. If you have heard about it, if you have read about it, but you're not very clear or you don't remember exactly, then depending on the context, you take a call. You know, that's what we call intelligent guessing. But there's no formula for it. If you're able to eliminate 2 options already, and if you're now struggling with 2 options, and there you have to make an intelligent guess, then it depends on that question and context and your reading, your own understanding. It's purely again elimination. So which of those 2 is more unlikely? But then even if you're not very sure, when it's about 2, go ahead. Okay? उसमें मत जाइए बहुत ज्यादा. फिर वो गेस वर्क आपने गेस करने की कोशिश कर ली, यदि ठीक है, यदि लगता है कि हाँ भाई ये 2 में से कोई है और वो 2 में से भी इसकी पॉसिबिलिटी ज्यादा है, तो यू गो अहेड. बट यू आर कंप्लीटली ब्लैंक अबाउट दोस 2, बट यू नो दैट यू ऑलरेडी एलिमिनेटेड द रेस्ट 2. वो हो ही नहीं सकते जो आप एलिमिनेट कर चुके. 2 में से ही हो सकता है. देन गो अहेड with an intelligent guess or without intelligent guess. Go ahead with it. Now there is Sakshi, Sakshi, if there are any questions you can always ask. We'll move to paper 2, which is, people say, very tricky. Paper 2. Okay, this opens in a very different format. Okay. All right, so paper 2, I mean, all the things that I talked about, from the eve of the exam to the day of the exam, the morning of the exam, and everything, of course, that goes with this. How to approach this paper? So इस पेपर का खासियत ये है कि आपको एक बड़ा स्कोर नहीं करना है. So you're not under pressure to score more than anybody else. Correct? So that should make this paper a little easier, at least in terms of the worry that would cause. But it's not the case for some different reasons. क्योंकि इसमें नो आपका कंपैरेटिव नहीं हो रहा है, आपका सिलेक्शन डिपेंड इस पे नहीं कर रहा है कि आप कितना स्कोर कर रहे हैं, उस पर सिलेक्शन नहीं हो रहा है आपका, और उसमें तो कट ऑफ ही डिसाइड हो रहा है, तो उसका सिलेक्शन ही उस पर हो रहा है. यहाँ ऐसा नहीं है. यहाँ आपको सिर्फ एक मिनिमम थ्रेशोल्ड लेवल क्रॉस करना है, राइट? सो दैट्स अ फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस व्हिच यू शुड कीप इन माइंड एंड अप्रोच द पेपर विद दैट इन माइंड. अब ये पेपर थोड़ा डिफरेंट है, हालांकि people coming from different backgrounds, educational backgrounds, have a much better level playing field when it comes to the GS1, because there are questions coming from almost all disciplines. So if there are engineers, there are questions from science, pure sciences. There are questions from history, geography, economics, current affairs, all those things. So there's this level playing field, and the questions that come from all these various different subjects are also kind of balanced. 15-20 की रेंज में मिल जाएगा, कभी कभी कुछ 21 हो जाएगा तो कोई 8 हो जाएगा, but those variations apart, that it gives you a level playing field, sort of. However, my own analysis of GS2 is that it doesn't really provide you that level playing field. Okay, so in the GS1, GS2, you have the syllabus. If you look at the syllabus, comprehension is there, right? Then there is mental ability. Then there is numeracy, right? And then there is data interpretation, then there's logical reasoning, all those things. However, if you analyze the question papers of last few years, this is very heavily skewed. There are, I believe there are 8 points in the syllabus, including comprehension and this. But almost 80% of the paper is on comprehension numeracy. Correct? So I'm just analyzing this. Very strange is out of 80 questions that you have, how many questions are on comprehension? Basically passages. Comprehension is passages. So in 2022 there were 27 questions on passages. Okay. In 2023, there were again 27 questions on passages. So which means that they are maintaining it consistently at that level, which can be a good sign for people who are scared of maths. But not really so, because out of these 80, if there are 8 topics mentioned in the syllabus, UPSC itself gave the syllabus, right? If there are 8 topics mentioned in the syllabus, if there are 80 questions to be asked, you would give 10 questions to each of the topics, right? Which they're not doing. And then there is something called numeracy. Now these are passages or maybe comprehension, right? And there is numeracy, right? And they claim that it is 10th standard. I don't know whether they decide the standard. How many questions are there? 34. 34 questions in 2022 and 35 questions in 23, which can be put in that category of numericals, which heavily tilts the focus of this entire exam on numbers and calculations, which is to me not logical. I'm not a paper setter, but know far more than the paper setter what it takes to be an officer. I'm very sure most of them, or at least all of them, the paper setters have not served in the services. They don't know what is required. Maybe they should spend some years in the service and see what kind of things are required to be a good officer, to be able to do well in your job, the jobs that we are seeking people for, and then decide what kind of questions we should ask them in the pre and mains, right? Instead of just making it very theoretical and or asking things which are absolutely ridiculously irrelevant for the job that they're supposed to do in future. But that's the unfortunate situation which exists, and you and I don't have much control over it, at least now. So we'll have to bear with it. We'll have to try and do our best. So such skewedness, you know, what does that mean? So 27 here, 35 here, what is left? 15, 17, 18 questions left from all those 6 categories, right? So that leaves you with 15 to 18 questions from all those other 6 categories in the syllabus. Now here the approach will depend on what you feel comfortable with. How? Now there could be some mathematics guys, you know, engineers or some pure maths types who would love this, right? Who just simply like it, oh, this is something that I want. And there could be some people who are good in comprehension, or they will say, okay, fine, this is it, good. But we will have to talk about a strategy. Here the strategy could be a little different for different people coming from different disciplines. But if I may say that even the engineers and people from mathematics background have found it difficult to attempt some of or solve some of the questions which fall in this category. Particularly last year's question paper 2023 was supposed to be one of such papers which terrified a lot of students, and also the ones who come from engineering and mathematics background, simply because, you know, general numeracy of standard 10, you talk about whole numbers, you talk about integers, you talk about fractions, you talk about percentage, you talk about proportions, whatever, fine. But you can't talk about silly things which they asked in the last year, which are so silly that sometimes I believe that either they must be educated about what IAS and IPS and all those services, you know, are supposed to do in field, or maybe, you know, they were out of their minds when they said that paper. What does that leave us with? Is because even if you come from engineering and mathematics background, even out of these 35, I'm very sure there would be 20 questions which you will struggle solving, because they're not pure maths. I don't know, we are not able to move this. If there is somebody who can help us move. Okay, so let's have a look at something. Let's have that very paper. But if you analyze the papers of 22, 23 scared a lot of people, but 22 is also not very different. There was a difference of only 2, 3, 4 or 5 questions which were very, very, what do you say, gross. You know, so there are any questions you take from the numbers. What is the remainder when 85 multiplied by 87 multiplied by 89 multiplied by 91 multiplied by 95 multiplied by 96 divided by 100? I don't know. At least in my 21 years of in IAS, I've never ever had to solve any of such things. Oh, the very next question. 57242 into brackets raised to the power 9 into 7 into 5 into 3 into 1. You know, what is the unit digit in this expansion? This is simply funny. I mean, I can't use any other word. The other words I can use are worse than this. हाँ जी 2023 का है, but there are some other simple ones also, but then there are 5 to 10 of such silly questions which should not bother you. Why? Because we're coming to the strategy. और भी है इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आपको इस पेपर में बहुत मिलेंगे, बट ये अनयूजुअल नहीं है. 22 में भी ऐसा हुआ है, 21 में भी ऐसा हुआ है. They've been asking such stupid questions. So we have to just simply ignore them. Why? Because we don't really need to worry about them. Why? Because out of 80 questions, how many should I solve? How many do I need to get correct? Huh? No, 27. I need to get only 27 correct. To get 60, 27 questions get me 66.67, and I need 66. Why? Because it's at 33%. It doesn't say 33.33. So luckily here, by solving 27 questions, you're safely placed. अब उस तरह से देखो तो ये बड़ा अच्छा लगता है कि भाई 80 में से 27 क्वेश्चंस का ही तो सही आंसर लिखना है. But it may be very difficult sometimes. Now here, every question is carrying how many? 2.5 marks. And then it costs you how many? 0.88. A wrong answer costs you 0.88. Right? No, nothing. It's fine. We'll carry on with this. So what do we do? So slightly different strategies. If you are a mathematics student and not scared of these numericals, follow the regular strategy of going from question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, go in that order. Okay? But if you are an engineer and mathematics student, you're not a mathematics student coming from humanities or anything and still scared of it, then follow a slightly different strategy. Comprehension is the safest part of this paper. And the fact that they're asking close to 27 questions from comprehension should give you some confidence. Because in comprehension, the answers are there. They just have to be found. And most of the time, the language in the passages is very simple. I have tried comparing the English, of course, because I only read them in English, but I tried comparing with the Hindi translation. Whether it makes it more difficult, it does make it a little more difficult. But still, it's very simple. It's not a literary or maybe it's not abstract. It's very plain and simple. Something that the officers really need in job when they're working. Okay? And then there are some questions and assertions. There's some reasoning. There are about 10 odd questions on that. So I would recommend starting your question paper with passages and doing passages only in the first round for 2 reasons. You build a confidence that you're doing well, because you're very likely to do well in passages. Second, because passages, reading a passage needs a concentration. You have to concentrate, you focus on each and every sentence. Read between the lines. Passages is not simple about what is written there. It's about reading between the lines. You have to, because the words they use, there are 2-3 types of words they use. They say reflect. Have you heard this word? कहीं पे भी चलते हैं, reflect आएगा कहीं पर. They would ask you which of these reflects what? Reflect is the most common word. Reflect means shows. Shows what? Shows the most possible conclusion. Shows the most reasonable outcome. Reflects reflects the implications of the message, or implies the message, or what reflects what the author is trying to suggest or recommend, you know, these kinds of things. So you have to read that. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different session altogether. What does this mean? And a lot of things depend, because sometimes when you read a passage and when you select an answer and then you discover that that answer you thought was absolutely correct, right? You think that's absolutely correct, there cannot be any other answer, and then you find it's wrong. The reason is in these words. कहाँ पर है क्या कोई word? ये तो बहुत ही सिंपल वाले हैं जहाँ पर which question, which statements are correct, but wherever there is some opinion or outcome or rationale or logic is asked, there you are likely to do a mistake, right? So we spend some more time because that's going into the specifics of the questions, which we're not trying to do today. Today's scope is not going into the any specifics of any types of questions. That we will take up separately, and particularly for this. But recommendation is approach passages, start with passages and do all the passages first. Why? For two reasons. One, that gives you a comfort and you get going, you get some good correct answers in the paper, and it also puts you in a state of mind to read and interpret continuously. Because when you get into this mindset, this frame of mind where you have to read a passage, answer the questions, read a passage, answer the question, read a passage, answer the question, that puts you in a comfort. On the other hand, what do? You read a passage and then suddenly you jump into a numerical. You enter a different state of mind altogether. Very different state of mind. We're worrying about something, you're calculating something, and then again come back to next passage. Then again, different set of, you know, mindset, and then the different frame of mind, which might actually take you a little longer to get back to concentrate on what is written. But if you're doing it in tandem, rather in a continuous manner, passages after passages, then you were able to focus better, concentrate more, because it's one type of thing going on, and it's more likely that you would do better by this approach. And then after say doing these 27 odd passages, come back. If you are one of those who are not scared of maths, then attempt all the questions which you left. Okay, passages आपने कर लिया, passages आपको पढ़ना नहीं है बीच में, passages करके पढ़ना नहीं है बीच में, passage ही passage करते जाने हैं. Jump from passage to passage. Don't mark anything, because you know that all non-passage questions are to be done. Get back in the second round. Now, how much time do you spend on passages? Passages are generally not lengthy. Generally, you can read a passage with any in say 20 to 30 seconds, depending on your own speed. इस तरह के 20 to 30 सेकंड वो शॉर्ट है. यदि बहुत बड़ा भी है तो फिर बड़ा यदि होता है तो उसमें 2-3 क्वेश्चन पूछ लेते हैं. So it evens out. A short passage generally on which they will ask only one question, it is generally short and you can read it in about 30 to 40 seconds. In this paper, you have 1.5 minutes to solve one question. Okay, so you have 90 minutes to solve a question. Now this becomes very relevant because you have to actually solve questions here. Unlike the GS1, जिसमें मैं बोल रहा था आपको कि GS1 में आपको सॉल्व नहीं करना होता है, आपको फाइंड आउट करना होता है इसमें से कौन सा आंसर है. यहाँ पे सॉल्व भी करना पड़ता है क्योंकि न्यूमेरिकल्स को सॉल्व करना पड़ेगा. So the solving thing is here, and that's where actually 1.5 minutes could be very, very small amount of time, given the kind of question they're asking in that section. However, you should be very, very particular about it. Now, how much time do you take to do all passages, assuming that there are 27 passages, 27 passage-based questions? So they are very likely to stay in that bracket of 25 to 30, you know. Very surprisingly, they are sticking to 27, 26, which is good. Now, what do you do? How much time do you take? You take this whole time or more if required. What does that mean? Multiply 27 by 1.5. What do you get? So maybe you get about 41 to 45 minutes. Spend 45 minutes, more than 1.5. Spend 45 minutes on passages. मतलब 2:30 बजे से लेके 2:30 बजे से लेके 3:15 बजे तक, 3:15. You must get used to your watch. You must know कि मुझे किसने में क्या करना है. मुझे पैसेजेस खत्म करने हैं, तब मेरा जो एक घड़ी का काटा है ये 3:15 पे आते तक मुझे करना है ना. और 3:15, 3:17, 3:18, गिव दैट टाइम, टाइम इट अप, बिकॉज इसमें टाइम कम पड़ता है, क्योंकि इसमें आप यदि क्वेश्चन करना चाहिए, बिकॉज सॉल्व करना है, राइट. So give yourself this 45 minutes to do the first round of passage, and then for the second round you come back. ये 3:15 तक आपने किया इसको, सेकेंड राउंड के लिए आप वापस आए, और सेकेंड राउंड के लिए आने के बाद आप रेगुलर कोर्स में चले गए. अब आपको पढ़ना है और डिसाइड करना है कि उसका अटेम्प्ट करना है या नहीं करना है. अटेम्प्ट करना है या नहीं करना है का फॉर्मूला सेम है. If you are able to, if you don't have any clue about it, it could be a numerical. आपको पता है कि हो ही नहीं सकता, न्यूमेरिकल है फॉर एग्जाम्पल, और आपको पता है कि आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते इसमें. सिंपल, डोंट वेस्ट एनी मिनट, एनी टाइम ऑन दैट. यदि आपको 10-15 पूरा क्वेश्चन भी नहीं पढ़ना है, यदि आपको पता है कि वो क्वेश्चन आपको नहीं आता है, तो पूरा ऑप्शन पढ़ने में मत जाइए. उसका जितना आधा हिस्सा आपने पढ़ा और आपको पता चल गया कि ये मुझसे नहीं होने वाला है, सीधा नो मार्क करिए और आगे बढ़ जाइए. There's no point spending time on those questions. We should then use that time, spend it on something which we can actually attempt at least. With that, if you're able to eliminate two, which will happen very rarely in this paper, right? This is not GS. So the thumb rule that we said, the thumb rule of half versus 1/3, use it very sparingly. वहां पर तो मैं कह रहा हूं कि आपको यूज करना ही है. GS1 में यदि 2 एलिमिनेट कर पाए हो तो आप तो यूज कर लो उसको. यहां पर सिचुएशन बहुत कम होगी जहां पर आप एलिमिनेट कर पाओगे. यहां तो आपको कैलकुलेट करके ही पता चलेगा. तो यदि आप कैलकुलेशन पता है, आपको उसका लॉजिक पता है, आपने उसके बारे में पढ़ा है, सी इफ यू हैव स्टडीड प्रोबेबिलिटी फॉर एग्जांपल, और फ्रोपोर्शंस और फ्रैक्शंस, परसेंटेजेस, all these things, simple things, you have studied them. आपको पढ़ना पड़ेगा, उसमें हम नहीं जाएंगे, but we will have another class on how can get very comfortable in very simple things, because out of these 35 questions, I tell you there are 10 to 15 questions which are very simple, which can be answered without solving them. But we'll treat that separately, how to solve those specific questions. यहां पर ऐसी सिचुएशन बहुत कम होगी कि आप एलिमिनेट कर पाओगे. क्यों? कैसा होगा वो? इनमें से कौन सा आंसर है? 45 है, 46 है, 47 है, 48 है. कोई गेस नहीं हो सकता. इसमें आप कुछ एलिमिनेट नहीं कर सकते unless you solve it following some formula that you know already, right? So there will be fewer occasions for you to use this thumb rule in paper 2, but if you have, use it. Don't shy away from using it. If you have been able to eliminate 2 incorrect options, and you know that the 2 remaining options, one of them is the correct answer. Now, by following this process, what do you do? Out of these questions, then there's another reasoning and assertion and reasoning, that now these days they're not calling it assertion, they're calling it question, okay, and then they're giving statement, and then they're asking whether this question can be answered by statement 1 alone, or by statement 2 together, or by statement 2 alone, or by none of them, right? उसमें आ रहे हैं, which is okay. They're falling in a rut. I don't know why they're falling in that rut. There's so many good aptitude questions to be asked, but वो इसी में जा रहे हैं तो अच्छी बात है. वो पैटर्न सेट कर रहे हैं. These are simple. The answer is there. and these are mental ability questions, and I believe these are the questions you can't prepare for. This is something that you will have to apply yourself there and then. Spend some time on these questions, you know. और ये कितने होते हैं? लगभग 10 के आसपास होने चाहिए, you know. इनमें आप टाइम स्पेंड करिए, क्योंकि इनमें टाइम स्पेंड करके क्वेश्चन के आंसर निकालने की पॉसिबिलिटी ज्यादा है, बजाय इसके कि आप ऐसा कोई कैलकुलेशन करने में लग गए जिसको 4-5 मिनट लगेंगे और पता नहीं कि वो होगा कि नहीं होगा. क्योंकि आप लास्ट ईयर का क्वेश्चन पेपर देखेंगे तो ऐसे कैलकुलेशंस है जिसमें आपको परम्यूटेशन और कॉम्बिनेशन बनाते जाने हैं, आंसर मिल जाएगा, लेकिन 5-7 मिनट बाद मिलेगा, उतना समय है नहीं. सो दिस रीजनिंग वाला जो क्वेश्चंस है, these assertions and reasoning wale questions, spend more time on that, spend 2 minutes on that if required. But those questions are generally of the kind which really don't need so much of time, but if you have to think and apply yourself, think and apply your mind here, so that way you get these questions about so we have this 27 question there, plus we have these 10 questions here. Now out of the remaining numericals, right, मैं कह रहा हूं कि जो 35-34 आ रहे हैं उसमें से 10-12 ऐसे होते हैं जो लगभग हर कोई सॉल्व कर सकता है. उसकी तैयारी अच्छे से करनी है, उसकी तैयारी अच्छे से कर लीजिए. उसमें 10-12 क्वेश्चन आ रहे हैं, प्रोबेबिलिटी पे क्वेश्चन आ रहा है, आपको पूछेगा कि इतने बॉल है, इतने कलर के इतने बॉल्स हैं, बहुत ही सिंपल प्रोबेबिलिटी के क्वेश्चंस है, राइट. एक क्वेश्चन बहुत ही सिंपल था पिछले साल, यू नो, 1 person walks this distance in one direction, the other one in this direction. Simple. Make use of the graph, make use of the space that is given at the back. Good thing is that they're giving enough space in the back of the question paper, you know, enough space at the back of the question paper. Use this space. ये जो space है ना पूरी, इसको use करिए. सब mental ability के question होते हैं, alphabets और numbers पे based, वो आपको करने हैं. Your attempt should be to try and get out of this 35 at least 15 correct, and these 15 are easy questions. 35 में से 15 जो है ना वो बहुत आसान क्वेश्चंस है. वो एक्चुअली जैसा यूपीएससी क्लेम करता है, वो एक्चुअली 10th लेवल के ही क्वेश्चंस है, बाकी नहीं है. तो ये जो 10th लेवल के इतने क्वेश्चंस है, here the good thing about this, if you are able to solve, you know that the answer is correct. बिकॉज आपको सॉल्व करने के बाद एक आंसर मिलता है, और यदि वो आंसर आपके ऑप्शन में है तो यू आर 100% श्योर दैट दैट्स करेक्ट वन. नाउ इमेजिन दिस वन, दिस टेक्स यू टू वेरी सेफली टू द जोन ऑफ अबाउट 90, you know, which means what do you do with this 27 here? Attempt all of them, all passages to be attempted, all reasoning to be attempted, and about 15 questions from the numericals which you have prepared yourself for, which you're comfortable solving. Spend about 2-3 minutes on here, each one. 1.5 is the time you have for each. But what are you doing with others? How many of them now? So ये 25 plus this 52 हो गए ना. ये 52 आपने सॉल्व किया. The others you have not even spent 20 seconds reading. The others are how many? The others are 28. तो 28 पे आपने कुछ नहीं किया. मान लो आपने ऐसे ही देखा होगा तो 10-15 सेकंड देख लिया, हाँ मुझसे नहीं होने वाला है. नो, आगे बढ़िए. तो 28 क्वेश्चन के 1.5 मिनट्स आपके पास है, मतलब लगभग आधा घंटा आपने वहां से जो बचाया है, वो आधा घंटा यहां लगाइए इन 15 क्वेश्चंस पे. ठीक है, इसका मतलब है कि एक एक क्वेश्चन को 3-3 मिनट दे सकते हो आप, कभी कभी 4 मिनट भी दे सकते हो. आपको पता है कि मैंने सॉल्व कर लिया और आंसर मुझे मिल गया तो करेक्ट ही होना है. सो दिस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. बट व्हाट आर यू डूइंग हियर? 28 के आसपास आप क्वेश्चंस को कंप्लीटली छोड़ रहे हैं. ठीक है, यू आर जस्ट सिंपली नॉट अटेम्प्टिंग देम. एंड इन दिस पेपर इट इज मोर इंपॉर्टेंट नॉट टू अटेम्प्ट अ क्वेश्चन, not to attempt. 1/3, half versus 1/3 thumb rule. Use it very sparingly, almost to the negligible level. 2-3 questions में आएगा तो आएगा, नहीं तो नहीं आएगा. Otherwise, spend time solving questions which you know, which you think you can solve, which you have solved earlier during your preparation. There are some questions which are getting repeated. Patterns जो है ना वो repeat हो रहे हैं. 8-10 उसको ऐसे ही रिपीट पैटर्न वाले मिल रहे हैं, 8-10 आप ऐसे ढूंढ लीजिए जो आप सॉल्व कर सकते हो सिंपल फार्मूला लगा के. And what you're doing is you're placing yourself in a very comfortable position, close to 90, 95 to 100. Very safe. है ना? So इतने क्वेश्चन तो छोड़ने ही है. Is there any question on this? Sakshi saying they use inference, assumption, corollary, etc. Also use idea message. In passages, yes. So we may talk about these things separately, Sakshi, because we will have to spend some time on that. I'm planning to spend some time on that. What is the meaning of these words? क्योंकि जो आपके क्वेश्चंस गलत हो रहे हैं ना, 27 क्वेश्चन में से you should be aiming at getting at least 25 correct. But when एक दो क्वेश्चन में तो होगा ही, आप इधर उधर हो जाओगे. But if you understand the passages properly and how to approach them, then you should be able to get close to 24, 25. पहली बार तो पैसेज पढ़ लो, उसके बाद क्वेश्चन पढ़ो. यदि क्वेश्चन का आंसर इमीडिएटली स्ट्राइक नहीं करता है तो फिर से एक बार पैसेज पढ़ो, या तो रेलेवेंट पोर्शन पढ़ो पैसेज का. पूरा पैसेज फिर से पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है, द रेलेवेंट पोर्शन. कभी कभी पैसेज इतने प्लेन है और इतना सिंपल है कि आपको लगता है कि दिस इज अ केक वॉक. आई मीन दिस इज सो सिंपल, राइट? सम ऑफ दोस क्वेश्चंस आर दैट सिंपल. आप मतलब वो 4 ऑप्शन में से 3 ऑप्शन ऐसे हैं जिसकी बात हो ही नहीं रही है पैसेज में, तो आपको पता है कि आंसर कौन सा है. बट कभी कभी ऐसा भी है कि बात भी हो रही है, वो बात उसमें आ भी नहीं रही है, और इंफरेंसेस ड्रॉ हो रहे हैं, और इंफरेंसेस में कंफ्यूजन है. So we will deal with that separately because we exhausted today's time, I believe. So we will deal with how to solve the questions based on passages, how to comprehend them properly. Maybe we'll spend one session on that. Any other question आपका इसके बारे में? Yeah. Sorry. So I forgot to do that. That's a very important question. The time between 11:30 to 2:30, don't go anywhere. Stay at the center. Eat what you have brought with you. Don't go to a hotel or restaurant. Just sit at a quiet place. Generally जो होता है कॉलेजेस वगैरह में होते हैं जहाँ पर बैठने की जगह मिल जाती है. जितना शांत और ठंडी जगह पे पेड़ वेड़ के नीचे या फिर वहां पर यदि बैठने की सुविधा है तो वहां बैठ के अपने एप्पल और बनाना खाइए, या फिर यदि आप लंच बॉक्स लाए हैं लाइट वाला तो, बट डोंट ईट मच. कीप योरसेल्फ लिटिल हंग्री बिकॉज दैट विल कीप यू अलर्ट. You don't want to get into a stage where you start feeling drowsy, you know. Of course the GS2 doesn't let you feel that way, but still you need little more alert mind to be able to comprehend, to do the calculations. So वो है बहुत ज्यादा इधर उधर. Keep yourself as calm as you can. Don't move around much. ऐसा है पता चला कि 3-4 फ्रेंड्स लोग साथ में एग्जाम दे रहे हैं तो चलो वो बगल में रेस्टोरेंट है वहां पे चाय पी के आते हैं, समोसा खा के आते हैं. Don't do that. Today is not a day, right? Yeah. So is there any question on friends? Sakshi ka hand raised hai. Yes, Sakshi?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are very much.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Sir, actually, I just wanted to share my strategy regarding CSAT. So basically, sir, I rely on passages. I don't rely on mathematics because that's wastage of time for me. Passage and then logical reasoning. So what I've noticed, sir, during when I solve the passages, which takes me about 1 hour. So when I read the question and solve the passages, it takes lesser time than first reading the passage and then solving the question. So maybe I just wanted to share my strategy if it helps somebody, that I just in a quick minute I read the question and then I go to the passage, and then I've noticed, like I've given 4 or 5 tests and I've noticed that when I solve the question and then read the passage and then give the answer, it saves the time than first going to the passage then solving the answer. Maybe I just my little sense of sharing with everybody my strategy of reading the passage and question, if it can help somebody.
Right, Sakshi. So Sakshi, you've heard her, no? So what she's saying is that what she does is she reads the questions first, the question first, and then reads the passage. जो आप बोल रहे थे कि ऐसा करना चाहिए क्या? If that works for you, you do it. You know, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा इसलिए आपको क्या सूट करता है, and that is something that I want you to practice. All these tips now you have taken them down, practice them, bring them into your practice and use, and then you realize that okay, no, I want to tweak it here. I want to. This is more comfortable for me, so I would approach it this way. So, for example, the strategy of approaching, doing the passages first, then doing the reasoning, and then going to the numericals and trying to solve about 15 of them. Something Sakshi probably identifies closely with this kind of setup. But then reading a question first and then passage would be a good idea. You can do that also if that suits you. But find your comfort, your own way. ठीक है? और क्या है? Bhagyashree ka, there's a question. Can we take, what is that? The scrap papers by UPSC as a mock test. No, I'm not clear about it. What are you saying? Bhagyashree, you can speak. Can we take the CDs or what is that? Bhagyashree, you can speak or maybe explain that question.
So they say that the exams by UPSC, like UPSC takes other exams as well. So can we take them as a mock test? Like everybody says that we must look into all those papers as well before the CSE exam.
You mean you're talking about the question papers of other exams conducted by UPSC for a mock test?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The CDS paper or the CBI and all those exams.
I don't think so, because they're set by very different people and their requirements are very different. If there were same people setting those question papers, then you would find some semblance, but in terms of the kinds of questions they ask, but they're very set by different set of people. UPSC has panels sourced from very wide disciplines, so not advisable, because there's plenty of if GS2, for example, if you solve question papers of last 7-8 years, try to understand the pattern of questions, that should be enough. That should be enough. Why? Because they're repeating patterns. जैसा मैंने कहा कि pattern repeat करें. In fact, there's a question that got repeated. 23 में there is a question which almost got repeated. That was in 22 also. Only changed numbers. So you could be lucky landing with some of these questions. 2-3 such questions you land up with and you've done well. And then because it's not you're not competing with anybody else, you just have to get over that cutoff of 66. So it helps. So don't do that. I don't think that's required. Just practice this type of questions are being asked and prepare yourself to solve that kind of question and variations around it, because they will not repeat it exactly the same way. They'll bring some smaller variations. So practice with variations. And then I believe there are other institutes also which are providing mock tests. I'm not in favor of doing a lot of mock tests. Last time also when we say what is a mock test, I believe you would remember how to approach a mock test and how to benefit from a mock test. Just doing a mock test may not benefit you if you really don't take it the way you should take it. So for those who have not seen that, maybe there's a video available, so you can see that video on the Attain app. ठीक है? और कोई क्वेश्चन है आपको?
सर अभी जो प्रीलिम्स आने के पहले का जो समय है, तो अभी 45 डेज पहले, तो हमारा आपको मतलब क्या करना चाहिए इस बीच? रेगुलर तो क्लास तो कर ही रहे, रिवीजन भी स्टार्ट है, लेकिन फोकस किसमें है? इस समय भी पीवाईक्यूज भी कर रहा हूँ, ज़्यादा पीवाईक्यूज कर रहा हूँ, तो क्लास का हो गया तो रिवीजन कर रहा हूँ.
See, revision of course is something that you should do, or this is the time to revise. Now, here on, don't spend time on reading newspapers right now. If you're, because that was I was recommending, but now stop reading newspapers. The papers are already set. So there's no point reading newspapers. Of course, if you can afford, you can do that, but nothing is going to come from there. Revising your own notes is something that you should do. That's one focus. Two, if you're doing one test in a week or two tests maybe, I recommend at just one test in a week. एक टेस्ट या मैक्सिमम 2 टेस्ट आपने कर लिया, और वही प्रॉपर फुल फ्लेज्ड टेस्ट होनी चाहिए with all these things. Then try and identify the areas where you are not doing well. Every test, every mock test that you do must throw up at least 15-20 topics which you have to prepare, which you are not prepared and you couldn't answer them in that mock test, right? That's the purpose. So every time what you're doing is you're revising something that you already read and prepared, but at the same time through the tests and all, you're coming across new areas and topics which you have somehow not been able to cover earlier. This is the time to cover them. Just these two things, right? So there is this question, what is that? That video is not available. So एक video वो कह रहे हैं कि available नहीं है, but we'll try to make that available. There was one session on how to approach mock test and how to benefit, how to take mock test. How should you take mock test? What you should not expect from a mock test? What you should expect from a mock test? That there was this session on that. Can you please conduct a session on approaching previous year question? Previous year questions, or if it's a previous year question or it's a new test designed by someone, it's one and the same thing, Bhagyashri. And that is what we have already talked about earlier in a very detailed manner. There was one complete session on how do we take that test, whether it is previous year's question or a completely new test designed by somebody. It's one and the same thing. So if that session is available, please go through that. Otherwise, we'll try to make it available. We've already done that session. So we may not repeat it as a session, but if it is available, we'll share. And approaching any test, just follow these steps. You practice these things. These are not for the final exam. Huh? This is for every test that you take up. Try doing these and see whether you make yourself comfortable doing all these things. Okay, so I think we will conclude this almost 2 hours now, and then we will meet again. आप लोग पढ़ाई जारी रखिए, ठीक है? We will come up with that session on CSAT specifically, on passages and on reasoning. बट आपका जो न्यूमेरिकल्स वाला है वो आप खुद करो. बहुत ही सिंपल क्वेश्चंस आ रहे हैं. 35-34 में से 15 क्वेश्चंस बहुत सिंपल है, विच यू शुड बी एबल टू डू. ओके, ऑल द बेस्ट.